Everyone wants to leave a legacy of positivity in the world around them. Whether you are a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a nonprofit executive director, or even a soon-to-be entrepreneur, one fact is always true. The easiest and most effective way to catalyze change in the world around you is through commerce and through business. But how do you do it? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Changemakers Collective, a place where people can come and get educated and encouraged and empowered to be the impact agent in the world around them. Brought to you by Silverback Ventures, Steff Thomas and Scott Woods have over 50 years combined experience helping companies and owners amplify the voice and multiply the impact of purpose-driven businesses. Join us each week as we discuss what it means to live a life of purpose on purpose.
All right, we are being silly on the Changemakers Collective today.
Yay!
Having a good time. I'm Scott, that's Steff.
Hello.
We, if you most recently listened to our episode on building a good mission statement and how to do that, we're kind of continuing that theme into things that people may overlook as their business continues to grow. And that's having and living out your core values within your business. And I think I said that 3 times because I think people will bring them in, and even probably more so than the vision and mission, the core values get put on the back page of absolutely everywhere because they're like, all right, well, nobody really cares about that kind of stuff, but it is absolutely integral in the success of your business.
So Scott, when you were talking about living out, sometimes we will work with a group that says, well, my core values are different than the company core values. Okay, well, I have a hard time with that.
I know you do.
You are the business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, core values show up not when everything's going well, because
that's
cute
correct.
buzzword core value words are great. But when you can't make payroll, the building burned down, and you lost your dog, how do you show up?
Yep.
Is what a core value really looks like. So if you are a solopreneur, if you are a small company, and you are the main leader, and your core values for your company look different than your personal, that doesn't make sense. If you were a large company, okay, you can have a set of core values, but your core values should drive who you're hiring because they can't
Come on. That's good.
Opposite of each other.
Come on.
So that, it's
So
a
I know
source.
this is
I
a
love
thing.
core values.
This is a thing
Right.
that we talk about all the time, and you do a phenomenal job of really walking people through an exercise for both their individual and their business.
And I
So
stole
talk
that
about-
from the leadership challenge,
Yeah,
right?
talk a little bit about what your definition of corporate core values is, or are, what corporate values is, and how you kind of walk people through that exercise.
So, core values have to align with your personal beliefs that define how you show up, not only in your personal space, but in your workspace. And the leadership challenge is phenomenal. They do a lot of work with that, but and I'm certified to do the leadership challenge, so I use their practice to teach that. And they talk about that they've polled over 1 billion people, and there are a list of 50 words. Now, people have the same definition and use a different word, but they have about 50 words that show up, right?
That people identify with.
Right.
Okay.
So you take this practice and you pick 10 and you pick 5 and you pick 2, and those typically align with how you show up when things go bad.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of joking in the beginning, and I said, okay, my top 2 are integrity and my family, right? So how does that show up at work? Well, if someone were to ask me to ask an employee to work 60 hours but pay them for 40, well, that's an integrity issue, and I'm just not going to be a part of that.
I mean, we've all had the story that I've told the story numerous times here, where one of the reasons I'm in Charlotte is because the company I worked for asked me to commit a crime.
Yeah.
And when I said no, they fired me.
Right.
I wasn't going to commit a crime. Now, and I want to say this with true deference to the situation. Could I have committed this financial crime and had nobody see it? The answer is yes.
Right.
But I would have known.
Right.
And my internal core values said that's just not the right thing to do.
Right.
And when I brought it up to the leadership, the top 5 people in leadership, which is a family-owned business for 100 years, said, nobody's going to know. You should just do it anyway. But my core value said, no, that's not who I am. That's not how I'm going to show up. And to go back to your analogy about your core value being family, I know that if we're on a call or we're in a meeting and one of your children calls,
or my
that
husband,
meeting stops immediately, and that's what you do. You can't say one of your values is family and then neglect when your family calls.
Right. But how that shows up in the workspace is if Kristen, our wonderful Nava Studio podcast producer, who is also a digital marketing guru,
Expert.
if she were to say, hey, I know we have a meeting at such and such time, but my son is sick, I would say, it's not a problem.
Families
Let's
first.
reschedule.
Yep. Families first.
No problem. However, if I said that family is first for me and not extend that, is family really first?
Come on.
That's why they can't show up in 2 different spaces. They have to be the same.
So when you're crafting those core values, which you would think because they're personal for the owner or for the leadership or for whomever is the group of people that are putting them together, should be fairly easy to pull together. However, I do think it's important to really look at those core values in the context of your business and say, okay, because we're saying we talk about them as big rocks.
Right.
You cannot change them.
Right. Non-negotiables.
They are non-negotiable, immovable objects. They are going to guide you in your decision-making and guide you. If we talk about conquering Everest, your values keeps you from falling off the mountain into the abyss.
Right.
Because they're movable.
Okay,
they're
so
unchangeable.
Scott,
My question is how do you ensure when you're crafting them, what is the process to come up with what those should be so that it's not all of the corporate buzzwords that just sound good that aren't necessarily who you are?
So, and again, if there's a company that's listening, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, we have a whole process to walk people through this. And again, identifying, is this a startup? Is this one, or are these existing? Do you have a large group of people? But we'll use an example of, we just walked someone through a core value exercise. It's a company that's been around for 20 years. There are several employees and part of the company. We ask, what are the current company's core values? That was kind of a pre-work. They use the buzzwords.
Sure.
Right? And they all drilled down to being one thing, and it was faith. Okay, that's good. When we brought everyone in, we walked them through a process, but we set the stage, right? If we were to talk about, and we eliminated the word faith, we eliminated, integrity, we eliminated a couple that was just like we work for this company, so these have to be the right things to say.
Right.
And we pulled everybody's core values and we asked, how does that line up? How does that line up with where we are with this company? Then they were able to narrow it down. There were 5 core values, and we created a Wordle, and it was cute. And okay, now they can all say, these are the 5 things in these order that we would stand on.
Yeah. And I think it's super important to, much like you want to regularly revisit your vision and your mission objectives, you want to revisit those big rocks, because the environment that you're working in or you're living in changes constantly.
Absolutely.
And how does the value of integrity look different in operational terms today with the crazy expansive use of AI versus how it looked 10 years ago or 20 years ago when you could have written these values and there was no internet? Like your value is your value, right? So if you value integrity That's awesome.
Right.
Frankly, every company should value integrity.
Yes.
However, what does that look like in practice?
Okay. Excellent point. First, I want to say, before we talk about that, people get hung up on, well, how can I just take these 5 words and they just be 5 words? I have to have a core value statement. No, you don't. No, you don't. It can be 5 words on the wall, right? You already have a vision statement and a mission statement. If you want a value statement, great. But you don't have to. It could be 5 words. And just like you said, so if it's in operations, right? If you say integrity is important, but you don't have an employee handbook, well, that contradicts, because you can't stand on integrity if you have no boundaries and rules.
Exactly right.
You can't say, well, so-and-so doesn't have to clock in, I got it, because integrity says we clock in and out every day.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, your value statements should show up in your process and procedures.
Absolutely.
Same thing with your mission objectives.
Absolutely.
If your processes are not keeping you in line with your mission objectives, which takes you to your vision, and are guarded by your boundaries or by your values, then you're going to set yourself up for conflict, internal conflict, because you're not going to know what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And we've talked about this several times before. The main job of the leader is to set vision and set clear expectations. You cannot set clear expectations if you don't know, and if you're not living out of your values as an individual, and you know where you're going and you know how you're going to get there.
Scott, the other day I was talking to someone and they were telling me about their core values and accountability. Accountability was their thing. And I said, okay, so as you're looking at your core values, how does that show up? How do you embed accountability into your day-to-day operations? And they were like, well, I mean, I don't even have my core values written down. And I'm like, okay, what does that even look like, right?
If you can't articulate what your values are, that's a problem.
Right.
As an individual.
Yes.
As an individual.
And you don't have to have 20.
It has
start with 2.
It has to start there. It has to start with you as an individual, because companies are made up of a collection of individuals that have unique backgrounds. The best companies are made up of people with diverse backgrounds and diverse thoughts that allow for innovation through collaboration. So you're bringing yourself to the company and to the situation with your own values. Now, if the leadership has done a good job and says, hey, our core values as a company are X, Y, and Z, and hired you correctly because you had enough integrity to not lie to them during the interview process, and said, yeah, I agree that integrity is important and accountability is important.
Okay.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I know you almost threw something at me right there.
I was like, wow. Let's talk about this practically. We were working with a client who is currently expanding their business. One of the conversations that we had was, okay, as you are interviewing people, the core values start in the interview process.
1,000%.
Because if their core values do not align with your company's core values, no matter how good they look on paper, there will always be a rub and there won't be an alignment.
Yeah, well, and you're also doing that potential employee a disservice.
Absolutely.
Because
it doesn't make them a bad person.
No, and I think that statement is important. Just because an interviewee doesn't align with your core values doesn't make them inherently a not nice, fantastic, wonderful employee for some other company.
Right.
But if one of your core values is faith, to go back to that analogy, and you're looking at somebody to hire somebody and they have no faith basis at all, you're going to constantly be in conflict because there's a different lens. So making sure you understand and can articulate and can live out your core values individually and corporately is the only pathway forward.
Okay, on a separate side of that, if the ability to be creative in your environment is important to you, right? Creativity is a core value. but you as a leader are a micromanager.
Come on, that's a good example.
Right? The person that's interviewing is never going to be successful. They are always going to be in conflict with how you lead them.
Or if your core value is, or one of your processes that are built on your core values is that everybody's got to be there from 9 to 5. I've worked with software developers that they won't even start working until 10 p.m. and they'll work all night long. I'm the best creative when it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And I had a boss that was like, I need to be able to get a hold of you at 8. And the guy's like, I just got done working at 5. I'm not going to be available at 8. But if your core value is creativity,
right,
and you're hiring creatives that work best on non-traditional hours,
scale, right,
you have to be aware of that, and
right.
you have to have account. You have to leave space for that.
Right.
There's so much. There's still so much constraints around the work environment, which is so interesting given how we've all transitioned through the COVID work
right.
from home thing, and everybody's kind of have the ability to work remotely and work their kind of hours. But you now see all these huge companies saying, nope, everybody's got to come back to the office.
Right.
Everybody's got to fill our office space, primarily because they bought office space they didn't need.
Right.
And now they're paying for empty space. But you're taking super creative people that are working non-traditional hours and are pigeonholing them to come into a space where they're tired and not productive,
right.
and then yelling at them for not being creative.
Right. So we have a client, and we just had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So during COVID, people moved from their central location because they went remote.
Yeah, they could. Yeah.
Now the whole staff lives greater than an hour away. Okay.
You can't expect them to drive.
Right. Like,
yeah,
you change the rules.
My son's a mechanical engineer, and his company is in the aerospace business. And they had a rule. They had an office space in Greenville. And when COVID happened, they generally had a rule that you had to live within an hour of the office, but you could work remote. Well, we had a couple people that just said, well, if I'm working remote, I could live in another time zone as long as I'm available during the time that you need me to be available. And now there is ongoing conflict because you've got several people that have moved to like Texas, certainly not an hour from Greenville, South Carolina.
Absolutely not.
And they're one of the best engineers. And now the organization's like having to rethink their process to account for having people that align with their values, align with their mission, align with their vision, but just so happen to be in a different space. So I think as we talk about all the different scenarios that play out in our society today, there's a ton of external factors that are playing a part in people's decisions to live and work in a space.
Scott, another thing that our wonderful Kristen asked was, okay, look, what does it look like if the leadership changes? Like, does the core value change? What does it look like? And I'm like, okay, well, there are stated company core values, and you hire people that fall under those core values. But a leader can have a set of core values that align with the company's core values. So
where does it start? Where does it start? Because that's an interesting piece of the puzzle. So if I'm working at, I don't know, Google, Microsoft, giant companies, and the founder of the company set the core values of the company, founder retires, new leadership comes in.
I've got one. Uber is a great example of that.
Go ahead.
Uber was always like, keep hustling, right? So it could be your side hustle, the car people, but they wanted to get people there back and forth. So hustle was a core value in everything that they did. Okay, then they went through a huge scandal with sexual harassment and blah, 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 kidnappings. And they fired the leadership team and they brought in a new group. And they said, okay, we do want to keep hustling, but we also want to do the right thing. So they hustle while doing the right thing. So the core value, their hustle mentality value didn't change, but their wording had to change to fit with what is going on currently in their environment.
This is where we're going to argue, because I think I know.
Maybe
Argue is the wrong choice of words, but when you have core value words without core value context, value context, I think it's hard. Like that hustle culture is by definition what Uber is designed for.
The truth is, hustle is not a core value.
No.
Right. So that was the first mistake.
Tell us how you really feel.
Not a core
For those
value.
of you who are just listening, there was all kinds of faces going on right there where Steff was just like, look, hustle is not a core value. What's wrong with you? But I think it's important to have context around, especially if you're going to use words that are somewhat familiar to everybody everywhere. The word faith is familiar to everybody, whether you're a person who says they're a person of faith or you're not, or it's one of the 9 zillion different religions across the world. Having the word faith in your core values will mean something different for somebody coming from a different perspective.
By definition, it transcends.
Correct. So having some context words around your core value, like when we created the core values for Silverback, it's not individual words.
Right.
We put context around what we meant when we said, hey, we're going to always work in a way that honors God and values people. Now, we could have easily said, be compassionate.
Right.
Or be faithful. Faith and compassion were two of the words.
Could we say be compassionate and have me in the room?
You're more compassionate than you give yourself credit for.
I'm kidding.
And I think, well, as a side note, the word compassion means to suffer with somebody.
Right.
Very different from empathy, which just says, oh, that's terrible.
Right.
Suffering with somebody is something that we both share that I think makes our company different. We
100%
very much value the we with our clients, not the you and us.
Okay, but Scott, look, we are compassionate, right? That's why it's easy for us to empower,
correct,
and educate.
Correct.
So one leads and feeds into the other.
Yep. Yeah. So our values, and again, this is why we're talking about this, because our values are statements, not words.
Right.
Always work in a way that honors God and values people. Multiply and magnify the efforts of amazing people doing amazing things. Recognize everyone has a unique gift that was given to be shared. And accelerate growth, innovate to meet needs, and invigorate servant leadership. Now, we probably have more than we need, but I think that's how we're going to show up. And that is who we are as individuals. And if we're hiring people for our team, we look for those values to be demonstrated.
Right.
It is not, we're not going to say, hey,
not buzzwords.
Do you, yes or no to these 5 statements? We are going to talk about and ask about, and you do an excellent job because of your background with HR, of having the right interview questions to be able to vet out how people really feel about these things.
Okay, couple things. I love this one. Okay, the first one is you said, okay, we don't have a value word, we have a value statement. But when we were going through the process, we first started with words and then we wrote statements that were meaningful.
Clarifying statements.
Right.
Yep.
So, it's there. And again, like I said, if you're writing the 5 words on the wall, if you're writing a one sentence that shares all of them, it's not how you present it. It is, do you have a value words, statements, and then can you follow those and see them embedded in your day-to-day? That's first. Second, you were talking about, thank you for giving me a pat on the back about
it's just truth.
Right. So I wouldn't lead someone as I'm interviewing. So those that are interviewing people, you have your core values, and family is your number one priority everywhere, right? You wouldn't say, well, what does family mean to you? Right? I mean, like, well, family's great. I love them. I've got plenty of them.
Check. I've got plenty of them.
I've got
I've got 17 kids, yes.
Work family, whatever. But what I would say is, if you were on, during this interview, if your husband, wife, child, whatever I decided to pull in there, called, what would your reaction be? And if they said, well, I mean, they know I'm in an interview, so I'm going to have to mute that call, they're probably not a right fit for me. And again, I wouldn't say, well, this interview's over. I would just say, if you had the ability to let that person know, your wife, your child, your mom, would you take the opportunity to say, 1 second, I need to make sure everything is okay?
Well, and I think what's interesting about that particular question in general, and this is when I'm coaching people that are going to interviews, it's your job as the interviewee to vet out the company you're going to work for. Well, if I'm coming and interviewing with you and I see one of your core values is family, I'm going to feel less awkward about taking that phone call or saying, hey, would you mind?
They knew us in an interview,
reaction
right?
As an interviewer in a company that says one of your core values is family is going to tell me a lot about.
If you were frustrated,
actually,
then family is not your core value.
It's going to tell me a lot about the company because, again, it's got to be more than a statement on your website. Right. It's got to be who you are and how you live it out every single day. And I think it comes out, and you said this in the very beginning, it comes out and, your value statements, your character come out in the middle of crisis. Mm-hmm. When it all hits the fan, what are you going to do?
How are you
going to show up? Are you going to rise to the occasion and live out the values that you say you hold dear in your everyday life, individually and corporately? When it all hits the fan and the lights go out and the air conditioning's not working and everybody's frustrated, or, there's a natural disaster or whatever the case may be, it's very interesting to watch the reaction of the people inside the building. If you've got a solid company culture built on shared values, a shared vision, and solid mission, there's not going to be chaos.
Right.
There's going to be
alignment,
uncertainty and anxiety, but there's not going to be chaos because everybody knows how everybody feels. There's going to be unity in how you move forward.
And Scott, as we wrap up, I never want to miss the opportunity to say that your vision, mission, and values are truly your guardrails that keeps you in the straight and narrow, for a lack of better words. Those things are so important. It should never be things that you write down, throw in a drawer, and never speak about again.
You've got to live it out. I think that's very well said. And most companies don't do it that way. Most companies don't do it that way. And I think you're missing out on an opportunity. You're missing out on an opportunity to create impact and create purpose and create value for your company and for your employees if you're not taking the time, or should we say making the time, to solidify your vision, mission, and values. So when it does hit the fan, and it absolutely will, you know how you're going to show up for your team, and you know how your team is going to show up for you if you're the leader.
So we are super excited that you were with us today. Make sure to subscribe and like us. If you need help, whether it's with your personal or your company core values or your mission, vision, value statements, make sure to reach out to Silverback Ventures. Till next time.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to the Changemakers Collective. If you've enjoyed this episode, please help us grow our community by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or rating us on Spotify.
You can also find our podcast on YouTube, so you can come and leave us a comment over there as well. If you want support growing your business and scaling your vision, visit us at silverbackventures.org or connect with us on LinkedIn.
Thanks again, and we'll see you on our next episode.